Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, ho, hello, hi fi. Dr. Mohsen, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Wonderful. Well, you know, we're going to continue with laughter, color, light,
Yes.
and sound. But
And
you
sound.
spoke to me about
Yes,
something
yes.
that came to mind. I often say blessings to people, and in all occasions I say blessings.
Yes.
And what were your thoughts on this? You're sharing on the word blessing.
Well, I try to make a distinction between provision, because provision is provided for anything which is created has been provided. You just have to move our foot, to get to it. But when it becomes blessing, that provision, it means the will of God has been injected in it. And
So
that means
the will of
right-
God combined with the blessing.
Yeah. The will of God, which is in provision, becomes blessing. So that's why in the wisdom of our will, which is the will being the mind of our soul, we can either go to provision or go to blessing. Let's say I go for provision, and I'm really a good snake salesman, snake oil salesman. I can hoard it. I can hoard provision and take yours too. And then I have a lot of provision, but there's no blessing in it. I mean, the example that I can say, Pharaoh had a lot of power and wealth, and same thing with Korah in the Bible. He was one of the wealthiest person at that time, but there was no blessing in his provision. But even Moses, had a little provision, but had a lot of blessing.
Oh.
So sometimes the length of the life, some people they live in a short life, but there is a lot of blessing in their years and in their times and their minutes. And there are some people, who live a long life and no blessing. So
what causes the differentiation in how some people's lives go one way and some people's lives go another? I mean, do you have any thoughts on why that is?
Well, biologically, every created living thing have a longevity, and we have talked about this longevity and maturity.
Mm-hmm.
So if we live in a very alkaline state of biology, an alkaline emotion, an alkaline mentality, an alkaline cellular state, then we live what we have been assigned for. That's why the centurions, they live with these principles. Their process, procedure, and practice is in these terms. Their food, emotionally, they are very alkaline. They're happy. So they're all of a sudden they live that assigned or appointed term. Now, when that appointed term is in surrender, submission, and service to Creator and creation in peace with joy, then it becomes blessed. So they have more joy. That's why they may not have too much provision, but they have a lot of joy, because it's that little provision has been blessed a lot. Just like Moses, had little provision, but a lot of blessing. And here, Pharaoh or Korah, had a lot of provision. They had hoarded taken it from other people, and they had no blessing. And you see what happened to people who have no blessing, what happened to their end.
Yes, but you know, it reminds me, as I was telling you earlier, the people of Jamaica, when I first went there in the mid 70s, the people had, as you said, little provisions, but lots of blessings.
Yeah.
Because they really, most of them, not everyone, but most of them were really surrendering in submission to serving Creator and creation. Because there is this very pious, very religious, very concerned with giving thanks for
And
the little that they have.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes people walking 5 miles to bring water back to their house was nothing. You know, no electricity, no hot water heater, but if you have a cold shower, it's a blessing to be thankful for.
And again, you know, right now we are going through coronavirus, and all the schools and everything is it's all closed, you know. But what happened, if you look at the reality, the God's school is open.
That's right.
If somebody willing to, and then he has no tuition.
Scholarships for everybody.
And then he's got a really prime faculties. The prophets, you know. So, you know, it just, somebody has to be passionate about learning knowledge and then go to school and learn it, you know. But so it brings us to whole issue of blessing and provision. One little seed has little provision for me and you, but once you know it's blessed, it becomes all of a sudden it divides and
multiplies. Yes.
Corn, and they give the corn to you and corn to me. See, the thing is, once that blessing flows in that seed expands and provides more provision.
Well, you know, generally, anytime anyone plants a garden, there usually is always more than they can consume.
Yeah.
So they either have to can it or share it.
Yeah.
Or maybe find ways to preserve it for, you know, the next season or whatever. But sharing seems to be a good way to increase your harvest.
Well, because the real true joy of life is in giving, not getting.
Yes.
You feel very content when you're in the position of giving. A tree in the orchard gives, it gives so it may live, for to withhold is to perish.
So sharing our provisions calls upon the blessings of the Creator to extend blessings out of the purity of our hearts, our actions and words, and hopefully it becomes electromagnetic. It starts touching everybody else. Your hands are glowing. You have energy abundance. But you know, the alkaline acidity factor, how does that apply in color, light, and sound? The alkaline.
Well, we have alkaline colors and we have acidic colors. For example, the purity of color becomes very acidic. That's why it's very detrimental. For example, we mentioned the gray is the impurity of color. Color has three components. It's the spectrum or hue. What part of the spectrum? Because we have vibration, and we only see one hairline of that. But if you look at the vibration, it has a very broad spectrum. But if I'm really narrow-minded, I only see one color or one little hair of the spectrum, which I think it's in the PowerPoint. So when we open our mind and become open-minded, we see the whole spectrum, and then you get to sense vibration. And
so the eye of the soul inspires the eye of the heart, the eye of the mind to see beyond the limitations of like a human, mortal, linear being.
Yeah, we see the spectrum. Vibration is the whole spectrum. But when we see the whole spectrum, we see light. But if we see only one fragment of the spectrum, either ultraviolet or infrared or one color or that, all of a sudden we are not looking at the vibration. We are really narrow focus. So what happens is that's why it's fragmented. Vibration is all together.
Fractalized.
Yeah, yeah. So you
So
see
those
holistic, you see quantum.
those colors we
So that's
spoke of.
why if somebody asks,
Go ahead.
oh, so if somebody asks you, what's your favorite color? You can detect, their mentality by the answer they give. Are they going to say all or just one? you know, then you,
I love the colors of the rainbow and those beyond the rainbow.
yeah. If you look at now, if you get later on, we get into Dinsha color therapy. You notice those colors are actually from rainbow. You don't see gray in the rainbow. It's very pure.
So the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet.
Yeah, yeah. And then it has between blue and the violet, you have the ribosomal. It's called cobalt blue. So in
Right.
between, like I showed you, in between you have a threshold. Threshold, which is very powerful. That's why television and the screen technology, they have gone to those thresholds. Like it's magenta and it's seafoam green and yellow.
Well, they started out with red, blue, and yellow.
Yes, yes, because that was the original. But now, if you look at bottom of your screen or TV, it's all magenta, seafoam green, and yellow. Now you notice in both of those approaches, yellow is constant. Yellow doesn't change. So with yellow, we can do a lot of things.
So the nano Weber, is it the nano specific nano Weber of color?
Yeah, it just when light, when vibration congeals and coagulates to a lower order into our procedure, I mean, what is it? Process, procedure, and practice, which is another word is subculture or subconscious. When vibration comes to a lower order and magnitude, it becomes light. But when light becomes to lower an order, it becomes color. That's why it congeals and coagulates.
Vibration becomes light as it gets denser.
Yes.
And then more density, it becomes color.
Yeah, I would say congeals and coagulates. It's like
congeals and coagulates. Is that a peristalsis process or?
Yes, exactly. Yes, because all of a sudden it's going into contraction.
Mm-hmm.
And then contraction always goes to expansion again. So it's a open, they call it open system, open function. That means go back and forth to each other. Science is only one way. It's a closed system or closed. There's no function in science. It's all system. Yeah.
So what light becomes as it further congeals, is that where sound comes in?
Well, the sound is a part of the vibration, but each portion of the vibration, we detected with different sensorial faculty. So those are our sensors.
Are we listening with the eye of the mind, eye of the soul, eye of the heart? Vision and listening, our senses going through that?
Yes. See, let's say the vibration has a spectrum. Part of that spectrum, we can hear it with this sensorial faculty. Part of it with eye, part of it with this. So each part of the spectrum, we have a different faculty for it. So the sound is not different than light or taste and all that, but it's just a different part of the spectrum. So we have a different sensorial sensor for it.
Now, is there a relationship to the negative ion, the ion capacity in those different levels of vibration?
Yeah, and you see, anything in nature is a negative ion because it has extra electron. That's what negative ion is. You know, positive ion, that means, you know, it's a free radical. So what happens here is when it has, for example, the water, when it rains, it has negative ion. So it's very energizing. And especially if there's a lightning. You notice after a lightning and rain, all of a sudden everything goes 10 inches up. But if there wasn't any lightning, you know, it just goes very normally, just like average.
Now, do you still have the lightning device?
Yes.
We don't know where it is exactly.
But the light, see what happens, you know, that's the work of Dr. Panos Papas.
Paulus Papa.
Panos Papas. He's
Panos Papas.
he's Greek. He's um, in Greece. Yeah.
Papas, the last name. Close.
Papas.
Papas, Papas.
Yeah.
And so the native people used to utilize lightning.
Yes. You know, they see. I mean, before even native, for many generations, there was a town in. Everybody makes fun about it. But it was a center of civilization, and it was called Timbuktu.
Timbuktu?
Timbuktu was a very center of civilization. You know, all the caravan, everything used to go there. And one of the main product that they had, there was a city about 37 kilometers northeast of it called Tabaza. Tabaza has the most prime, best salt, because salt was the way of like gold when it was for exchange. You know, monetary exchange, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all junk bonds.
Bitcoins.
And this city of Tawaza was built with salt, and the salt was such a high quality you could see it from far away. So Timbuktu was the center of civilization. These people, they knew how to lay in a certain ways in lightning and get healed. And that's what Dr. Panos, when he was doing research, he was looking at this primitive tribes, how they used lightning without getting shocked or ashes and for for healing, because that kind of magnetism is so strong, it flushes all unfriendly organism out of the body. It's like a very magnetic alkalinization.
Detoxifies and alkalines.
Yeah. Magnetic alkalinization. Yeah.
Yes. So is it thunder? Does lightning have a frequency that's been understood? Does B flat relate to lightning or thunder?
I don't know. But all I know that lightning, you know, is it's a very extreme case of negative ion.
Waterfalls, rain, when the rain is falling.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why, you know, when there's a rain or a thunderstorm and there's lightning, all of a sudden there's so much energy in that water. Now, I used to do the same thing. I used to magnetize water, and that water all of a sudden it had so much energy. Same thing, not good as nature, but I mean simulation of what's in the nature.
Mm-hmm. And how would you magnetize your water?
Well, because I used to put it in the bottle, you know, put the loop around it, you know, and magnetize it for 5 minutes. Like, you could do actually your food, you can do almost anything, you know, you magnetize it, just like lightning does to the rain.
Now, a lot of people use the moon, the phases of the moon, the energy of the sun to work with crystals, like if clearing crystals and purifying crystals. Some people say periodically you should put your crystals in the sunlight and the full moonlight.
Yeah, it's we know that the sunlight, detoxify everything.
Now, the colors that we spoke of that I call aquamarine, and it's magenta and sea foam.
The seafoam green is like in that one of those charts, we can see it. It's somewhere between blue and green, because the Earth, all the biology is green, and then sky is blue. So what somewhere in between those two, we get seafoam green, or oceans.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lot of plant growth in the water, then it's green, and then with the blue of the sky and all that, it becomes a seafoam green. So seafoam green is the most tranquilizing color.
Yes.
If you take all of the biological creational colors, add them together, plus light at noon, you get seafoam green. So you have a little hue of that behind you. You see a little bit, when the blue is going toward yellow, you get a little greenish.
Yes.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, a little bit to your right.
Yes. Well, the pink, the use of pink, I don't know when they started, but prisons and jails started having pink holding cells for people that were very excited.
Yeah. And the colors have complementary. For example, if you take the color, if you have yellow, blue, and red, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If you add the yellow and the red, you get orange. Orange is complementary color to blue.
Mm-hmm.
You see those two?
Yes.
And now if you take the blue and yellow and mix them together, you get blue and yellow, you get green. So green is complementary to red. That means that when these colors are next to each other, they intensify the effect of each other.
Do they create more assimilation?
It's basically they're complementing each other. So you see the red and you see the blue a little bit more. I mean, green a little bit more. So they intensify the effect of each other when they are next to each other.
Now, does your understanding and working with color, the standard color wheel that businesses use, is there a standard wheel that makes sense from the way you see the use of color for healing and understanding it?
And well, what happens, I look at the healing colors, colored wheel, which is about, Insha came with about 9 colors. And these 9 colors are the one, that I have made gels out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you put it in your, sometimes you can maybe go over this. There's 9 gels. It's like a filter. Have I shown those to you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's when you put it on a projector and put it on somebody's body, you get certain frequency, which is the opposite polarity and opposite magnitude of vibration of a germ, for example. And this was the work of Insha Gadiali, who worked in New Jersey in the early 1900 all the way to mid 1900. And he came up with a lot of simulation of that.
Now, what were you saying was Walter Russell's contribution to the understanding of color and light?
Well, he recognized the issue of vibration and light, and the distinction between light and color.
I found it very interesting. There were, I forget how many names, the list of names that we talked about the last time.
Yeah, those are the people who, along the history, I would say, last 1,500 years, they have had a lot of research or work on color therapy. The very last one was that lady, I forgot her name, Kate Baldwin. Kate Baldwin was a apprentice to Din Shah, and she was a medical doctor, licensed. First woman who made it to medical school. And she started using it, and she got in trouble for many times, but she proved that that it was working. So that was the very last one. And then recently we have John Ott. John Ott was a very good researcher, and he thought fluorescent light. Because fluorescent light is like having a GMO food. Because sometime during his time, he's passed away now, but fluorescent light is very fragmented light. It wasn't full spectrum. But even now it's full spectrum, it doesn't have the ingredients, biology of solar light.
The biology of solar light.
Yeah, it's a picture of it, but it's not real. It's image of that.
So in a way, it's like digital sound.
Yes. And that's digital light. Yeah. So that's why it's the sunlight that excessive cholesterol under the skin, when it's exposed to it, it turns it into vitamin D, which is very important for assimilation of calcium, process of calcium in human body, which is the king of the mineral. Everything is calcium based. That's why we have calcium channels in our body. And if we don't have that, magnetism cannot really transfer from one point to another.
So sunlight provides, specifically, what would you say, the healing element to life here on planet? Because there's enough sunlight, but not too much. It's within the perfect boundaries that we're not.
Yeah. Because we have also damaged the layers around the earth by pollution and entropy. So that's why sometimes, ozone layer has been fragmented. So sometimes we may get certain part of that radiation more or less. That's why they say ultraviolet, has become more, because the ozone layer, which is at the outside of the earth, cannot filter it or put it into what's the word for it? Put it into I forgot the word. Anyway, into a mountain that we really need.
Into a precise, is it a prescription or precise
Homeostasis.
Homeostasis.
There's no mental blockage here. you have to appeal to your soul to kick you in the on the porch.
So you're still using your cobalt blue drinking glasses?
Oh yes. Cobalt blue is RNA has three components. One of them is messenger transfer, and then ribosome component, which is usually energy for the RNA to do regeneration, repair, and that's a cobalt blue.
Now repeat that again. It has what qualities?
It has the cobalt. There is a RNA has three components.
Three components.
The energy of the RNA, they refer to it in technical word, ribosome. But ribosome basically simply is a color, is a light, which is cobalt blue, which is between violet and blue, which is very energetic. That's why you notice, for example, they have that in airports because it can travel much more. So that's why when you if you drink things in cobalt blue, it has that attribute.
So there is a brand of the glass that doesn't go by the name cobalt blue. There's another name that's being used. It seems like you know, people that collect old blue bottles. There was a time, I guess, was it in the turn of the century, that there was a lot of this blue glass being utilized?
Yes, yes. It's actually the work of Dr. Emoto showed that it's very energizing and also uh, a structuring attribute.
The glass itself,
Yes.
in addition to applying, say, the word love
Oh
or
yeah. I mean that's
joy,
yeah.
happiness.
Otherwise we start swearing, or saying those bad words. I messed up your water and mine and everybody around me.
Hey man, not such a bad vibe, man. Cool it.
And even the thoughts of it within you, it affects the vibration that you give to that person or that water.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
why you can hold it in your hand and don't say it, but you say it very quietly. The water hears. Yeah.
Well, the surface tension of water, the lower the surface tension, the higher the purity.
Yes, what happens, what we have in the purity, it's called TDS, total dissolved solid. The pure water, which is the rainwater, it has a very 0 to 1. If there is no pollution in the air, it's like distilled water. And it's very low TDS, maybe 0 or 1. And then the deionized water, when you deionize water, I have some experiment that I have done. When you deionize water, let's say all the stuff that was wrapped around the molecule of water, they separate, deionize, because it's the ion that holds it together. Now, all of a sudden, I have this molecule of water here, and then there's a bunch of other things attached to it, like a well water. And when we deionize it, all those things fall down. That's why for every glass of water, all of a sudden you get about half an inch of junk that was not assimilative in human body. I don't know if I've shown you that.
You have a collection of this.
Yeah. I've tested most of the bottled water. It's such a sad thing, that people go and spend money to buy bottled water, and some of them are about 200 TDS. Over 5 TDS is not good to go in human body.
Well, the Sacramento River up by Mount Shasta, they have a lot of people, when they go up there, they take bottles and fill up and take that water home.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, in Glastonbury, also, where our radio station is from, there's the Red Springs and the White Springs.
Yeah.
And the streets, there's a place called Chalice Well in Glastonbury.
Yes.
And the water, it comes out on the street so that people can, in the community, come there to fill their vessels and take that water home. Now, the ley lines, we were talking about ley lines and the energy in the earth having an effect on the water.
Yes. Places that the earth grids is not torn by EMF, everything is better. Even like Chinese way of agriculture, they find these ley lines and they put the trees on those. It's not like grid, straight here like this, because they are very observant of that attribute. So they put the trees right on the ley line in the old days. But now modern days, everybody puts it in there. It's tropical conveniences.
Well, there was a gentleman, the last view over Atlantis, a very in-depth book on ley lines and the grid lines of Earth, that spoke about how China is very, very meticulous about that.
Yeah. I mean, their agriculture, especially agricultural cultures of the past, was plant on the ley line.
Now, these energy meridians, these maps of energy,
yes,
like when people are dowsing,
yes,
they are sensing that focus vortex, that peristalsis is there.
yes. Well, I mean, when they do that, there's many things that they have to consider when they dowsing. Otherwise, the dowsing is not going to be correct. For example, they can't have polyester clothes. They can't have a battery watch. They can't have a cell phone because all of those, throws the whole thing off.
Uh-huh.
So they have to be in pure presence.
So before there were satellites, Chevron, these oil companies, Standard Oil, how did they, is it true that they use dowsers to help them locate where to drill?
Well, for the water, they used to, in the old days, it was they used to use the dowsing to locate water.
But not so much of the oil drilling.
I've never heard of oil, but I have heard of water. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend in the Phoenix area that was a dowser that had a reputation that sometimes he got a call from some oil companies that wanted him to work on a certain area of land to see if
Yeah.
his way of sensing the energy verified what they
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, because what's underneath, affects the energy that Earth is reflecting. So I'm sure there's a procedure to do that, but I don't have any knowledge of it.
Now, when there's energy, like, is there a consideration of building a house over running or flowing water?
Well, that's what they say. It's not good to be over the flowing water because you don't know what it contains. I used to make dowsers. My dowsers, the two rods were very expensive. It was about $1,000 for a pair because all the bearings, see when they turn it, it's usually a rod turns inside a tube.
Right, right.
But in the bottom and the top of it, I put very tiny little ball bearing, zero friction. And these were in gold, so there is no friction, so it was reflecting when you douse a human body as well, So I still have some of those. So in about maybe a few months when everything is open here, I can show you those dowsers.
Yeah, I made some, but I probably didn't make them the way that you did. One minute. I'm sure I didn't do this effectively.
Oh yeah, you see that at the bottom and top of it,
Yeah.
there are something called, you can buy it, that pipe that you're using, probably it's about half an inch. The pipe at the bottom of it, the diameter,
Yes. The little bead.
half an inch.
Yes.
Yeah, the diameter of, yeah, there are, even they have it at 3/8. It is very expensive. There are ball bearing that it's called zero friction.
Zero friction ball bearings.
Yeah, and you put one on the top and you put one at the bottom. So that rod, when you put it in there, it can flow with no friction, because if you don't have that ball bearing, zero friction ball bearing, then you have some friction.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it becomes more accurate, especially if you're dowsing somebody's body.
Now these are reacting. They see they just spread wide apart. They were a little bit closer together.
Yeah.
Now they're coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know what's attesting to that.
Well, it also, I don't know if you are aware of what's called Hartmann line. It was German, because we have so much electromagnetic effect on these dowsing and all that. So that's why you cannot really do effectively, precisely do dowsing when there's a lot of electromagnetic field in there.
What are those lines called?
Hartmann line.
Hartmann lines.
H-A-R-T, Hartmann.
M-A-N. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hartmann lines are the lines that runs north to south and east to west. So east to west is about average of 7 feet apart, and the one north to south is about 8 feet. And he was the one who found out, if this grid of Hartmann line, and if people are sleeping with their head or heart at the intersection of these lines, is very prone to cancer because it affects the autonomic nervous system.
So living in proximity to those lines.
Yeah, that's why if you're in the middle, so that's why I used to dowse for Hartmann line, and I used to find where these lines were. And then, there are ways that you can push it inside the wall. So it's not, let's say, where you put your bed or your bed. Yeah.
Your bed or your dining room table
Yeah.
or places
Now,
where you spend a lot of time.
his finding was that female are more sensitive to these lines and much more sensitive than male.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes he recognized over his work, that it's the female who decides which side of the bed they want to sleep. And the male and the male ends up with the other side. It could be a Hartmann line.
But they have 37 more connecting tissues.
Yeah. So he found that the female, they're much more. And now, if you look, for example, certain animals, if you look at ants, they travel right on these lines, and the mouse, usually runs in between. They can't go on these lines. Or sometimes cats or dogs, they don't like to be on the intersection. They go right in the middle. So different animals, they have different response to these lines. Hartmann line, yeah.
Now, is there a color emanating from those energy zones of the earth?
I mean, any vibration, any oscillation or vibration, when you octavate or fluctuate it lower and lower and lower until it comes within the spectrum that eyes can see or ears can hear,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns into a sound. So, but you're octavating, or in my vocabulary, fluctuating it down,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes within the boundary of a visible band. For hearing, with, let's say, between, let's say, 16 to 20,000 or something like that, then you can hear it. That's why some of the telescope, when they take a picture, those lights are way beyond our visible band. So they octavate it down and down until it becomes within our visible band, then we can see it. Now, I suggested this is something I do in the morning. I get up about 3-4 o'clock, and I really start gazing into the stars. So after a while, you realize that first you see maybe thousands of us, and after a while, your vision goes deeper and deeper, and you can see the smaller and the smaller and the smaller one. And you can do that about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning if you're willing to get up.
I'm up often at that time.
Yeah. So just to step out, and if you are not in a very polluted area, you can see Milky Ways and everything, and you see how everything flows with perfect order, with no flaw.
Well, so
And
you find a star, you meditate upon that star.
I mean, I do at that, all of them.
All of them.
And all I ask the Creator to give me a deeper vision. Then I see, just like, when you go to the beach,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of sands. These sands are not connected. When you look up there, you see it exactly as by the beach. You see there's that much of stars, and all of a sudden you expand. And real great revelation comes to you. And that's where the school we should go now. It's open.
Yes, indeed.
But nobody wants to go to school at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, those negative ions are pretty abundant during that time of day also.
And then it's about the time, it's a threshold, just like the colors. it's a threshold that all of a sudden nighttime is flirting with the daytime, and they come to twilight zone.
Mm-hmm. Now, while you're having this experience, if a Kirlian photograph were taken of your energy field, some
Yeah.
people can see with the eye what the Kirlian photography captures.
Yes, yes.
And there's some techniques of, I don't know if you know the technique of creating you have your two fingers like goalpost on a football field,
Yes.
and you focus your eyes so you make a third finger appear in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's called splitting the ethers. It's a training to see Kirlian colors.
Yeah, it's sometimes when you bring it here because of bring it back and forth, all of a sudden you see a third finger.
Yes.
But because the eye gets to a point it cannot send to left and right, all of a sudden you see one in the middle.
So is it the GDB? What is it, or Kirlian photography systems that capture the color emanating from the body?
That is by Dr. Konstantin Khodkov. It's one of my heroes. I think he had one of the greatest discovery. He used the Kirlian photography, and he's called GDV. I have those equivalents. Gas discharge visualization, because usually that visualization of gas, it's somewhere vibration transferred through gaseous state, and those gaseous state is maximum at the tip of your finger. I don't know if I've sent you some picture of that or not.
Yes.
When you take these pictures, these are where it comes the most. So that's why you can detect the state of the health from these fingertips. And you can do a whole hand, but these fingertips are the most.
Well, I've had some experiences when I'm doing sacred sound sessions for people, and I sometimes have I'm at places that have dogs, and I come out and the dogs are reacting to the energy of my hands.
Yeah.
I'm walking with my hands normally, but they're really reacting, like they're sensing something.
Yeah. You remember IBM, Isa Ben Mariam?
Yes.
He wanted to heal. He didn't put his arm, or face or anything. He put his hand on the head. And then, send that energy of these things through the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the color of when we put our hands together like this and make small circles until we feel that ball of energy in between.
Yes.
I do a visualization where I do this and I envision red, orange, yellow. The ball gets bigger and I keep envisioning the color getting bigger.
Yeah.
And I basically bless myself. I envelop myself using my hands.
Yeah.
Over the front and back of my body, and I do that to others before when I'm doing a session with them.
Yes.
My mother, my grandmother, and my mother, oftentimes as a child, if my mother had a headache, she would say, "Come, lay your hand on my head."
Yeah. Because what happens, here is your autonomic nervous system. Now, unfortunately, we are living in a modern culture that totally we are overriding autonomic nervous system. So we cannot go to sympathetic or parasympathetic, either through tranquilizer, the street drugs, or pharmaceutical drugs. All those things has dementation effects. Because dementation means, autonomic nervous system is like GMO. God move over, autonomic nervous system, go to sleep. Yeah.
So trying to outthink God, we come up with these human systems that don't compare to nature's pure functions.
Yeah, because this nature is the school. The faculties are free. I mean, the wisdom of our soul or wisdom of our will, it either go with this or you go with the one I think I know better. And then that's why I flunk. Everything that I do is becomes how can I say it? It becomes a sumness versus assurance.
An assumption versus an assurance.
A sumness versus assurance.
Assumnance
A
versus
sumness.
assurance.
Yeah. So what happens? Everything becomes my my understanding, not the nature's understanding, because mine is with nature, with compared with nature, is not even a grain of sand. And that's when insolence comes in, because I am very insolent. I say I know better. And then I become very arrogant.
But what happens when you accumulate so much energy from that way of behaving that all of a sudden it seems like your techniques don't work anymore? People get tired of you being around. They say, this person needs to be separated from the rest of us.
Yeah. You know what happened? That's what happens, all of a sudden, arrogance and insolence, it wipes out all the blessings. I can have all the providence, I can have the whole world. And we have so many people, example of these Korah in Bible, Pharaoh, and many wealthy people, but they didn't have any blessing. They had a very sad ending. But we people, with little, just like a seed, with little provision, you have so much blessing because you're in a state of surrender, submission, and service. And all of a sudden, that blessing makes that little provision happier than if you had the whole world.
Yes, yes.
You know,
So how do you suggest we implement these principles if you're building a home and say your front door, are there colors that might be more agreeable at the door color, and then the first room that you come into, the rooms in your house having different functions
yes,
should be addressed with color,
yes,
light, and sound to
yes,
complement that function?
yes. That's why you want alkalizing colors. That means it heals you. For example, you don't want you want maybe your bathroom, no, I mean your kitchen, when you get up in the morning to be yellow, because it gives you the sensation of sunshine.
Yes.
And then maybe your bedroom, you want to be tranquilized, relaxed. You want it maybe seafoam green.
On green?
Seafoam green, yeah.
Yes,
Very
seafoam
light,
green.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a studio that you go play music, or you try to do painting or drawings or whatever, you need to be stimulated. You want pure red.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, what about for using the mental capacity for studying, for meditation or contemplation?
I mean, if you then I would say cobalt blue.
Cobalt blue.
Yeah, because it's the most energetic light.
In the Cherokee Holy Lands near here, there's a place called Black Mountain.
Yes.
And there's a gentleman, I forget his name now, but he built a dome there. He built a geodesic dome about 40 years ago. And it's called the Light Center. It's open all the time, 24 hours. You can go in at any time and meditate or pray there, or go during the day. If you go there, the people that work there will give you a light treatment. You go in a separate room in the dome and they have it set up, but I don't know if they're using, I hope they're using full spectrum light.
Well, they have to put, you can't use, for example, LED or fluorescent. You have to get those incandescent,
Mm-hmm.
old incandescent. And there is a company called the German company that makes lights. Is it Sylvania? I think it's Sylvania. They actually produce health full spectrum lights. the person who really did a lot of research on this, his name was John Ott,
John Ott.
and he wrote a book called OTT.
OTT, yes. Mhm.
And he wrote books, Health and Light. There's many books he wrote, but the most famous one is called Health and Light.
Health and Light.
Yeah.
So looking through the out through to the world through rose-colored glasses, where did that little idea come from?
Well, I mean, just basically rose color has a very energizing color. At the same time, essential oil, if it's rose, this sensory has the highest vibration.
Now, what's that? What has the highest vibration?
When you make essential oil, which is from rose essential oil.
Right, rose. Yes, yes, yes.
It's very expensive. This is work of Bruce Tainio, who has passed away, but he did capture. I have his equipment. He captured the frequency of the vibration of all different essential oil. So what happens? You have to leave. You have to totally be in a place which is EMF free, which is two devices to really isolate in a room. And you put this essential oil here, and you put your sensor on top of it. And then when the essential oil is being diffused, it picks up the frequency. This is work of Bruce Tainio.
Bruce?
Tainio. T-A-I-N-I-O.
Taninio.
Yeah, you have to ask somebody who's a spelling bee.
Well, frankincense is 180, I believe.
186.
And I think rose oil, isn't it 360 or so?
320, yeah. I mean, these are his tablets. His recording, yeah.
Now, the precise measurement of those frequencies of oil is done by what means?
It is a machine. It's called BT2, and now they have a new one, BT3, which is named after BT3. It picks up the vibration. For example, there used to be a guy used to come up to Randy's workshop. He used to do certain things to the water, and these geometry he used to make, and he dropped it in, let's say, in your jar. And one time, we took all day, we measured the frequency of this with and without it. So all of a sudden the vibration changes, and this machine, it picks up the vibration.
It's V? V as in Victor, T?
Oh, you mean his name?
No, the device or the...
B like boy, T like Tom. It's Bruce Tainio. It's after his name.
It's after his name, BT.
Yeah, BT2 or BT3.
And they are still on the market?
I would think so. He passed away a few years back. I used to go and visit with him once or twice a year, but he passed away. He was only 65. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the laughter, the color, the light, and the sound has given us another wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
So next week, we can continue this process, because we are going from the eye of the soul, eye of the mind, eye of the heart, and the eye of the body.
Yes. And it's the wisdom of the will that directs us toward polarity and possibly away from duality.
The wisdom of the will,
yeah,
connects us to polarity and away from duality.
Yeah, if I'm unwise, I go toward duality, plus or minus. And I create a science and sell it to you because I'm with the snake oil salesman. But then the next scientist comes and proves that how badly I was wrong. But that's why I mentioned, the polarity has it's centropical, so it has assurance. But duality has it's all based as sumness.
A sumness.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to assure us that we will meet again next week, okay?
Yeah, I mean, did you have a chance to look at that PowerPoint?
Yes, I went over it, and I'm going to go over it again, and then I have more questions to discuss with you.
Maybe that's the process, a very basic process of the very beginners for colors and light. If those are concepts they understand it, then we can build up gradually, get into why this color is healing and why it's not, and how to compose the gels, these 9 different gels, how to compose different ones with this, for different symptoms.
So each of the names on your list, they had a very specific contribution to the understanding of color and light, right?
Yeah. I mean, see, there's 9 different gels. This is by Dinshaw, it's not me. But when we use these in different, you 2 or 3 of them, you put it in front of your this light shelf or projector. When it's shined on the body, and there's a few slides that know how to shine it on different bodies, and what section of the body is it, local or is it general, the whole body, systemic, or just the local. So for certain complications, you have to go systemic. That means the whole body. For some stuff, you have to go local. So those are in that presentation that I sent you.
All right. Well, to be continued, because we don't want to be hosting any germs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right, my brother. Thank you. Blessings to you. And thank you so much for taking the time to share this inspiration with us.
Yes, thank you. And 5 blessing.
5 blessings. Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics and the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too